welcome to Inner Peace Better Health, the space where spirit meets stillness. I'm your host, Saima, and tonight we are going deep with the mystic mind of Sebastian Dienst, a soulful guide, global thinker, and torchbearer for the collective awakening. We are talking about rituals, ceremony, and the sacred phase shifts that are shaking us awake individually and globally. Now, if you have ever felt a nudge that something bigger is unfolding, you're right, and this episode is for you. So, Sebastian, global awakening sounds massive yet deeply personal. So, what does the term mean to you, and how do we know that we are in the middle of one?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, first of all, for inviting me to your podcast. It's a pleasure to be
Mhm.
here. Um, well, I think we have to only look into our personal lives as well as just outside in the world. That there's a lot of disarray, there's a lot of converging crises that I think we are all experiencing to some extent personally. So the four major crises that I'm sort of documenting in my upcoming book are number one, the arrival of superintelligence and the um, what that means for us in terms of our hierarchy, in terms of intelligence on this planet. Number two, the potential breakdown of the global monetary system. Number three, accelerating climate change. And number four, the end of the US empire and the many network effects that this has. And as you rightly pointed out, uh, these are not just converging crises. It's almost akin to like a rite of passage on a global scale and like an initiation for us as a species as it wakes us up into a larger and deeper reality of what it means to be alive, to be an empowered species, to be a mature, empowered planetary species. So that's my perspective. And, we all have our individual experience of that. I think a lot of people, especially since COVID, have experienced a lot of um, different uh, tensions and challenges in their personal relationships. Um, And even if you don't have this global perspective that I just outlaid, I think over the last, let's say, 5, 6 years, a lot of people, if not all of us, have felt that something is shifting on a planetary scale.
Mm-hmm. So, how can someone differentiate between, personal upheaval and collective transformation?
That's a great question. I think they
Mm-hmm.
go to some extent hand in hand because we're all part of the same field. So, along the lines of if there's a great tsunami coming, this happened during the big tsunami 2004. The animals anticipated what was happening before and they left the shorelines, or the Schumann resonance, which is measurable, um, which has huge spikes usually before major global events. We kind of are steeped, whether we like it or not, whether we are aware of it or not, in this collective field. And so the disturbance in the collective field will inevitably lead to changes, if not more upheaval in our individual lives. Um, Obviously, it isn't always one to one, but I think it is safe to say that the challenges that we are experiencing individually are often interlinked with the challenges that we're facing collectively.
Sebastian, that really reframes chaos as a calling, not a curse. So, many of us needed to hear that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as challenging as it is, these times of crises are really rattling something deep within us that is asleep ultimately, that is unconscious, that is the shadow. So a lot of shadow is being exposed collectively as well as individually. And it's tough. I mean, there's so many revelations politically, especially economically, that are really hard to stomach. And yet, it is, in my opinion, a necessary path towards uh, greater wholeness as we start to integrate the things that we've pushed into the unconscious. Um, so yeah, it's going to be even more challenging, in my opinion, in the coming years. But from a collective species point of view, it's truly our coming of age, our growing up into a mature planetary species.
That completely makes sense. Now, let's talk ritual. So, why are sacred rituals, so vital during the times of change and uncertainty?
Well, I think, we have lost in our postmodern individualistic society, we've lost the connection to the rhythms of the earth. And that often means the cycles, the seasons, um, celebrating the life and the planet as an animate object. So animistic traditions, um, don't just see the world as just matter and, the mountain is just a pile of stone. It's an alive um, spirit that happens to be manifested as a mountain. Um, and so we've largely lost touch with this kind of um, more uh, sort of felt sense relationship with the rest of the world, to be more sort of in a heart-based communion. And therefore, I think we've lost large parts of the inner scaffolding that helps us to stay grounded, that just provides a uh, level-headed, good foundation in terms of ethics, in terms of values. As far as I know, you're based in India, for instance, and I've been to
Mm-hmm.
India a few times. And the last time, for instance, I was spending time in a panchakarma retreat place where every morning and every evening there was a puja. And even though I didn't understand the Sanskrit words that were sung, it was such a beautiful ritual that somehow had a very soothing, grounding effect on my psyche. And I went every morning, every evening. And something like that is it's largely missing in Western modern society.
Mm-hmm. So, can you share one simple ritual you practice that others could try during a transition phase?
Well, I think, like I just mentioned, just to have a morning ritual and an evening ritual, which could be directed at certain deities if that's what you believe in, or the natural world could be addressed, um, or just your higher self. You find your own way of working and sort of setting up your ritual. I think the a key point in terms of ceremony and ritual is for people to uh, get confident and um, sort of comfortable to actually intuit their way into their own ritual so that they can design their own ritual over time. So in our family, we have a little altar for the morning, and we have a different little altar for the evening, with different objects of devotion and prayer. And this is, our unique representation. And there's, for instance, Mother Maria is on one of them, or I'm very fond of a Indian sage called Ramana Maharshi, so he's on one of them. And I think the point is the the heart will guide you into the right direction, which is ultimately then a space that deeply nourishes you, um, that holds you, that gives you a sense of clarity and grounding when you need it. And for us, it's really a container that sort of really gives the whole day a certain protection to some extent. So in essence, there's no real blueprint. Just intuit your way into what is most helpful for you, and do gravitate to, uh, certain objects or um, uh, sort of archetypes that can really that emanate a certain quality that you want to bring into your life. Um, but I think the first step is just daring to set something like this up in the first place.
I love that. Ritual as a way to make the invisible visible. It's grounding and expansive at the same time, right?
Exactly. Um, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but like I actually have um, a, candle, a ritual candle or ceremonial candle venture that I've been working on with my wife, to help people invite these moments of reverence, moments of presence in more into their life, um, where we take a sort of European wax manufacturing style. So that in European churches, you often see these pillar candles with wax ornament around. They're all handmade. And we are creating currently a series of intention candles or ceremonial candles on specific themes. Let's say peace, love, joy, abundance, etc. So that you can actually use this object of a candle as a vehicle to invite more of a specific quality into your life.
That's really great and admirable, Sebastian. Now, you mentioned phase change, and that's such a powerful metaphor. So, what does it look like when a person or a society shifts from one state of being to another?
Yeah, it's really almost a scientific phenomenon, phase change. So we observe it in nature in different species or in different materials. The famous one is the metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly, but there's also the transformation of a nymph into a dragonfly, or when water freezes, it completely changes its state into ice. And there's many interesting sort of metaphors within that. So, for instance, the water freezing to ice metaphor, the molecules just before the freezing is reached, all molecules are just totally chaotic. They're moving around in space, and it seems like absolute chaos until they snap into a crystalline structure. And so I'm writing a book at the moment, and I'm using this kind of larger metaphor of phase change for
Hmm.
what I believe is happening to us collectively is that, and I'm using a sub metaphor here, in terms of the caterpillar is actually eaten up from within by something called imaginal cells. And these imaginal cells are dormant in the caterpillar up to a certain point, and then they wake up and they completely devour the caterpillar from inside until they then start to uh, reassemble uh, the caterpillar into a butterfly. And so that metaphor of imaginal cells to me is very poignant because we see a lot of converging crises and a lot of breakdown, as well as a lot of breakthroughs. Right. So, there's many breakdowns happening, but at the same time, there's many breakthroughs happening. And so this to me is akin to this larger theme of us shifting into a different state, a different phase of human evolution completely. So this is different from, let's say, us going from agrarian to industrial civilization, or from hunter-gatherers to agrarian, um, because these breakthroughs that are coming online with AI, with genetic engineering, with quantum computing, or different system designs are just so profound that I believe, 30 to 50 years from now, human civilization will be in many ways unrecognizable. Um, and so that's what I'm trying to uh, sort of build a narrative around so that people, on the one hand, actually gain hope and don't just see the breakdowns happening, but actually can sort of subscribe to a larger narrative that this is going somewhere. And then secondly, to actually actively participate in this larger than life event and, do our individual part in facilitating this phase change.
Mm-hmm. That image of a melting point is so real. Sometimes breakdowns are breakthroughs wearing a different face, as you said. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, mhm. Ceremony, often gets labeled as outdated or over spiritual. So, how can modern souls reconnect with ceremony in a grounded, meaningful way?
Yeah. I mean, it's um, interesting you say that it was, I think, what to some extent still is considered outdated. Um,
Mhm.
because to some extent, I think it's hard to decipher this scientifically. And yet, when you actually immerse in a ceremony, whether that's facilitated with some plant medicine or entheogens or without, um, whether that's in a context that is part of your cultural context or not, I think it's undeniable that if you really tune into your body and into your felt sense, that something is evoked. Somehow the field changes, and so I think, in some sense, all of life is a ceremony because we in some sense are uh, we don't know really what is going on. We all just sort of live in our constructed worlds of meaning and names uh, that seem to make sense, and on some sort of dualistic dimension do make sense. But like if you really step outside of these social paradigms, these social constructs, then ultimately everything becomes very sacred, which to me is kind of the root of most ceremony is trying to evoke and call into space the sacred. Um, and so I'm not sure whether there's going to be a similar sort of mindfulness-based stress reduction kind of approach to ceremony. You know how meditation was uh, secularized and very sort of almost scientifically dissected and proven for Westerners. And that's how a lot of Westerners took up meditation over the last 10, 15 years. I'm not sure if that's going to happen with ceremony and ritual. That would almost destroy it from my point of view. I think it's more of like a heart calling that people are craving spaces that have a deeper sense of connection. And that is kind of numinous. It's something that you can't really measure or write a scientific paper on. It's just a felt sense that you get drawn to or not.
Can you share the difference between routine and ritual, and why does it matter?
Yeah, great question. Well, I would say if you are in a routine, it's easy to fall asleep to some extent and to just sort of follow a certain protocol that you've been upholding for some time. Whereas with ritual, there's always, at least the rituals that I'm aware of, there's some element of, you know, waking us up, making us become aware of the fact that we are doing a ritual in the first place. And so um, it's this kind of tool in some sense to shift from the mundane and the profane into the sacred. And some resonate more with some people and some resonate with others. Like you're gonna have to find what is the ceremony, the ritual that helps you enter that kind of sacred space. Where some people get drawn into more esoteric practice. Some people are very drawn into, uh, a veneration of nature, and there's gazillions of others. So I think that the first step is to just really become attuned to this lack of connection that most of us are feeling in our day-to-day Western, hyper technologized world and lives. And yeah, ritual, ceremony is one way of deepening your own connection with life and with yourself.
Yes, ceremony isn't performance, it's presence, and that distinction just hit deep. Now, if someone listening feels like they're awakening, but they don't know what to do with, where do they begin?
Oh, well, um I think it's every awakening path is unique. Um some people go into meditation practice a lot, some go more into devotional and prayer practices, others commune with some higher power in nature. Um, and I'm sure there's many, many other more. I think, this acknowledgement of a desire, the longing for something more uh, real, something more profound, something that makes you feel more alive, and to follow that thread, that instinct, which often is irrational, right? So if someone's really kind of stuck in a 9 to 5 job and um, you know consuming mass media and feeling a sense of emptiness inside and a sense of just feeling not really alive, there's usually some doorway that opens up, or some kind of quiet voice that is longing for something else. And that longing may then call you into an adventure, may call you into deep silence, may call you into something else. So it just requires just a deeper listening and courage to venture out of your existing pathways.
That's so gentle and real. Sometimes the next step isn't a leap, it's remembering to listen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I, you know,
Mhm.
I don't think it's about like big, huge fireworks and major life changes, especially at the beginning. It's more just this gentle attunement to a different possibility. And often it just starts with like, what gift are you withholding from life? Like there's a simple question, like if someone asks you, what's a deep, profound gift that you are withholding from life? And most of us uh we are withholding from life because we're too scared. We feel uh we're not good enough, we're not there yet, or what holds us. And so there's always this kind of longing for a, a more meaningful life, for a deeper expression of who we are. and to dare to go outside of the existing confinement of your own life. We're all to some extent trapped in our sort of social identities, and it's often not easy to really break out of them.
Absolutely. Sebastian, thank you for guiding us through the fog into the sacred. And dear listeners, we are all part of something vast and beautiful unfolding in the perfect, painful timing. So honor your shift and ceremony and trust the awakening. Until next time, breathe deep, stay open, and move towards your inner peace.